This story is Sontaran. Excellent. Okay, let's go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who Series 4, Episodes 4 and 5, The Sontaran Stratagem and The Poison Sky. Okay, first off the bat, this story is not as good as the previous 3 stories, but it's still very good. It's still a very, very good story. The plot sees Martha Jones calling the Doctor back to Earth, as she promised at the end of Series 3, and she gets him to return to Earth to serve as an expert for UNIT, which the Doctor had gotten her a job at, as mentioned here, and also mentioned in Episode 6 of Torchwood Series 2. Captain Jack theorised that he probably owed her a favour. This is, by the way, the first proper UNIT story since Battlefield. They've popped up a few more times in the new series, but this is the first proper UNIT story, now renamed the Unified Intelligence Task Force rather than the United Nations Intelligence Task Force, probably due to because they didn't see the Master taking over the world last year. But now the year before, I should say. But yeah, this is the first proper UNIT story since 1989's Battlefield. But anyway, as I was saying, the Doctor and Donna join Martha and UNIT, and they help them investigate Atmos, which UNIT believes to be dangerous, may have alien qualities, as 52 deaths at the exact same time across the world happened. Not to mention that a journalist who was going to see UNIT has also been terminated following her visit to the Raskin Academy to meet the man himself, Luke Raskin, who invented the device. But despite being a boy genius, the Doctor knows he could not have invented that system on his own. Not with Earth technology, at least. And his suspicions and UNITs turn out to be right, as an alien force is behind Ratigan to create the Atmos system as part of their stratagem. And it, of course, turns out to be the Sontaran. The first Sontaran story, at least the first proper one in the show, if you exclude Shakedown, The Return of the Sontarans in 1995, and also the Mind Game franchise, but those are not actual Doctor Who. They're just using Doctor Who characters and monsters and stuff from Real Time and BBV. However, for the actual show, it's not. We haven't seen the Sontarans on screen since 1985. They probably appeared in Big Finish once or twice. Actually, did Big Finish actually do the Sontarans after they returned to TV? I'm not actually sure. They might have actually waited. Not even quite incredibly sure. But anyway, but as I was saying, this is the first television appearance of the Sontarans since 1985's The Two Doctors. It's been a long time coming, but they're back. And in all honesty, I think the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky is actually responsible for making us learn more about the Sontarans than any classic series story did. Maybe some of it comes from expanded media or from BBV real-time productions. But I think this story introduces us to more Sontaran lore and culture, so to speak, than any of the classic series stories that did. I mean, we got introduced to them in the Time War, and over the other stories, we saw exactly what they were like, and they had different personalities despite looking very similar to each other. Hence, links and style looking very like each other. But this story, they just introduced a whole lot more elements to this Sontarans. They have the Provic vent, of course, at the back, and the fact that they're clones, but they also have the gas that they breathe, and the bubbly water that they breathe, and the chanting, and the more of the honor is present in this story. I think Helen Rayner not only did she get the Sontarans, but she added some stuff that would not only make them fantastic in this story, but this is probably the best Sontaran portrayal It's characterized. I mean, I loved the Sontarans in the previous, in the classic series stories. Okay, I wasn't so fan of the ones from the Invasion of Time, but they were done well there. And the two Doctors ones, they were also handled pretty well, despite the actors being too tall. But despite only having 4 stories, we don't know a huge amount of them. At least not outside their first or second stories. But this story not only keeps the Sontarans true to what they originally were, but it brings in a whole new stuff with them. Not only that, but these Sontarans, or at least Commander General Stahl and Commander Score, are 2 of the most characterized Sontarans. They have the most personality of any Sontaran I've seen, other than Commander Strax later down the line. Although he's more of a comedy Sontaran, these guys are more like what the classic series ones are. And they're less played for laughs, and they're proven to be a very strong group. Oh, and also Commander Karg in the Sarah Jane Adventures. We'll get to him at a later point as well. But these, like I said, these guys are just very characterized. General Stahl is a general you would just want to follow into battle. He's so great. And Christopher Ryan, who played a character in Mind Warp, one of Sill's boss, basically, in Mind Warp, Trial of a Time Lord Parts 5 to 8. He's back, and he does an outstanding job as General Stahl. And future Doctor Who alumni Dan Starkey also does fantastic as Commander Score. He's great at doing comedy, but he's also brilliant when doing his the more serious stuff, as Commander Store is showing. But he's clearly having a ball of a time. In fact, both actors are, and I just love the Sontarans in this story. This is probably my favourite portrayal of the Sontarans' classical new series. They later get a bit more comedic later down the line, partly due to Strax, but also partly due to the writing by Stephen Moffat, who just makes ordinary Sontarans too comedic as well in the time of the Doctor. So hopefully Sontarans in later down the line will be a little bit more serious in the future, at least apart from Strax, obviously, but other Sontarans down the line would be a bit more serious. But they are kind of silly looking designs. They're not go too dark or serious. They're not that type of monster. They're not Daleks, where despite the design looking dated by the 70s, once they returned to the new series, they were a force to be reckoned with. The Sontarans aren't like the Daleks or the Cybermen, where they could look silly at one time, but at another time they are more than deadly. I don't think the Sontarans are quite that high, unless someone made them that way, in which case that'd be a new angle to go down. But in the meantime, let's just return them back to this type of Sontaran, what the Sontarans are like in this two-parter. They're just absolutely brilliant in this one. This is also the best Sontaran design the blue uniform's also great, and they have a more uniformed look here than they did before. Although I do like the black uniform ones from the older Sontarans, but I think the blue ones work really well here, and it also helps that they have some very purple lighting in their spaceship. Blue and purple just work for this story. Maybe later down the line they might return to their black costumes. That was a rumour about Series 12, that the Sontarans might return with black costumes. This ultimately turned out not to be the case, perhaps later down the line, but the blue costumes work really well for the modern Sontarans, and the Sontaran heads are the best ones. They actually look like potatoes. They capture the original designs really well, but update it for a modern audience, and they not only do they look great, but they also look very convincing. You can tell the other ones are a little bit more like a mask. This time, they just put on the whole face and head around the actors, and it looks really, really great. So Sontarans are a massive tick from me. That's the best thing of this story. The Sontarans are handled perfectly, and the story surrounding them is also really great. This could be one of my favourite Sontaran stories of the show. I mean, I did like the Time Warrior, did enjoy the Sontaran Experiment, did enjoy the Invasion of Time. Two Doctors was fantastic, but there wasn't a huge amount of Sontaran involvement in that one. To be honest, neither was the Invasion of Time before episodes 5 and 6. But so this one could be the best Sontaran story where the Sontarans are the main threat, because the Two Doctors, they were a main threat, but not the main threat. Jacini, Jacqueline Pierce, was more of the main threat there, and the Invasion of Time, they were only the main threat in the last 2 episodes. So this is probably the best this is probably the most center stage the Sontarans have been since the Sontaran Experiment, or at least the last 2 episodes of the Invasion of Time. And yeah, it's great to see how that they've working with Luke Rattigan, the human genius, and he's developed the Atmos system. Luke Rattigan's been promised that he and a couple of selected students of his would move to a new planet, whilst the Sontarans use Earth as a breeding planet to create more clones for their war against the Rutans, which is also mentioned here. Like I said, they capture all the stuff from the old series as well. It's also around that point when the Doctor realizes that that the war's going badly, that he sonics the screen to go to Tommy Zoom when the Sontarans start chanting. P.S. Tommy Zoom was a very good series. And then it's only for a few seconds. It's actually got less screen time than Teletubbies or Clangers, but still. But anyway, as I was saying, Ratigan has developed the Atmos system, and the Sontarans are using it it's supposed to cut off carbon fumes from cars, no carbon, but instead it turns out that it's holding all of the carbon, so it's going to pollute the planet. Hang on a second, this is a global warming climate change allegory story. Oh no, but Doctor Who must never be political, except it can be. So that's the Sontarans are planning to turn the Earth into a new breeding planet for clones to fight in their war for victory, so on. So the Doctor and company have to try and stop them. However, the Sontarans have decided to kidnap Martha Jones and clone her so that they could get a clone in to prevent nuclear missiles from going off, from going up into the atmosphere, which would ignite the gas and burn it, even though the missiles wouldn't dent the Sontaran ships themselves, which was what the humans would be wanting them to do. Also, Clone Martha and 2 controlled unit soldiers go on to have the TARDIS sent on board the Sontaran ship. By the way, these 2 unit soldiers have some pretty good personality. There's one of them is obviously a more tougher guy, but he's also quite sentimental, so he can get a bit. He's kind of a mix of both. You could be a bit too. You could be a bit harsh on some people. Start with, you can be a bit too serious, but later on he's a bit more kinder and likable. The supposed thing is that he's confident. That might be both his strength and his weakness. Whilst his colleague is a bit more cautious, a bit more careful, and a bit more worried. As General Stahl says, he smells like sweat and fear, just after praising the other guy. And they get controlled by the Sontarans, like the factory workers at the Atmos factory. It's also quite funny that when they report for duty, when the Sontarans attack the factory later on to protect the clone, to divert attention from their operatives, so to speak, when those 2 unit soldiers under Sontaran control turn up, said reporting for duty, sir, to one of the Sontarans, it then walks away and then turns around and shoots them. I don't know whether I should think that's funny or a terrible thing for that Sontaran to do. They were under his control, or their control, I should say. But at the same time, it's kind of humorous without having to be comedic. I don't know. I'm also wondering what happened to those other 2 factory workers that were at the Sontaran bit in the basement. I wonder what happened to them. I wonder what happened to the factory workers full stop after the gas started. Oh, and speaking of the Sontarans attacking the factory to protect the clone Martha, that is undertaken by Commander Score, and this is probably the first time we've actually had a Sontaran battle against the humans, and it's a really great fight. It's probably the most Sontaran battle of the entire show, the most battle we're going to see on screen. We did see them invade Gallifrey in the Invasion of Time, but we didn't really see them do much battle there, and in 2 Doctors it was off screen. Maybe a little bit of battle in the Time Warrior, but nothing to the extent of this story. This definitely shows the Sontarans at their strongest, and certainly in the field of battle, and just absolutely amazing. I'm going to go and say it. I'm going to stop right now. I'm going to say it right now. This is the quintessential Sontaran story. I'm sorry, classic series fans, but this is the quintessential Sontaran story. I'm sorry, it just best Sontaran personalities, best depiction of the Sontarans, best Sontaran fights, the closest you're going to get to a Sontaran battle against someone. In fact, actually, no, there is a proper Sontaran battle here. This is the quintessential Sontaran story. And you know what? Yes, this story actually is as good as the first 3 episodes of this series. You know, sod it. This is a fantastic story. I'm sorry, I've been saying all of these last couple of stories have been fantastic since at least Human Nature, Family of Blood. But I can't help it. Again, they knock it out of the park once again. And if that wasn't good enough, then you also got the great character depictions between the Doctor, Donna, and Martha, as well as the unit stuff. Although by this point, the Doctor now does not like people with guns. I can understand that, but he gets a bit too over the top. Still, I can understand his reasoning, and at least he doesn't hate soldiers full stop for no reason like he does in Series 8. Yeah, we'll get to that. But also the characters of Donna reuniting with her family and Martha being taken by a clone. And you can tell there are clues differencing the clone from real Martha. She's a more confident and more cynical and a bit tougher than the actual Martha. Not that real Martha is bad, not at all. I spent the last series praising her after all. But you can tell Freeman Rajman, like Jenna Coleman would in the Zygon two-parter in Series 9, she's getting into this villainous um, portrayal of the character, but still being a different character, but trying to act similar to the companion character she plays. That is really, really great stuff, and I look forward to seeing that happen again in the future. Like I said, Jenna Coleman did a brilliant job at doing that with Clara/Bonnie in the Zygon two-parter in Series 9, Zygon Invasion, Zygon Inversion. And she was brilliant there, so I look forward to seeing more companions, actors, playing someone who's taken the form of a companion and just using that as part of their advantage, as part of their battle strategy. Although that being said, I don't know why they specifically chose Martha Jones here, the Sontarans. Maybe because she had level 1 access, maybe they knew of her history with the Doctor, even though they were surprised to know the Doctor was here. But I don't know, maybe she was just very high profile and they needed someone, or maybe it was just selected randomly, perhaps. Script wise, it would have to be someone who the Doctor has known already. And as Brigadier Lethbridge Stewart's here, he's stuck in Peru until the Sarah Jane adventures later on in the series, and then he's back in Peru after that. So they obviously need someone that the Doctor knew, and Martha had been integrated into units. Or at least they decided to do that anyway. So here we go. Well, at least it also gives Martha stuff to do so that they can justify her return in these stories here. Otherwise, it's fan service. But yeah, the whole But yeah, the stuff with them is great, and Donna family stuff is also really great. And have I mentioned how much I love Bernard Cribbins? I love Bernard Cribbins, and don't be surprised if I say that a few more times in the next couple of reviews. Um, but yeah, the whole family interaction stuff, really, really great. And when Donna has to go onto the Sontaran ship to sort out the teleports when they're cut off, that's some really great stuff, especially when she gets the TARDIS mallets to knock the Sontaran on the back of the neck. Catherine Tate is amazing. Just absolutely amazing. The cast are just perfect in this story. Absolutely amazing. I also want to say that Luke Rattigan, despite being a weedy, annoying child, is played really well by his actor. And in the end, when he's realised the Sontarans have betrayed him, he knows he's done wrong. And by the end of the story, when the Doctor's going to sacrifice himself, Luke then decides to do something clever, as the Doctor told him to do, and swap places so that he can take the Sontarans out himself after the Doctor fails to persuade them to leave. And also, the Doctor manages to clear the Earth by using the thing Luke was building to make the new planets they were going to habitable for humans, so that they're able to clear the planet out. So, on the whole, the Sontaran Stratagem and the Poison Sky, I've been talking about both episodes kind of mixed this time around, rather than last series where I was talking about each episode individually. But this time around, it was a bit more of a mixture of the two together. I just really enjoyed this one. I thought it's the best Sontaran story, with the Sontarans up front and centre. Although out of all of them, the Two Doctors is still my favourite. But that one wasn't so much about the Sontarans. They were more grunts there, to be honest. For the real villain, Shasini, and the Invasion of Time, they were the main villains of only the last 2 episodes. So this is the most Sontaran. The Sontarans have had the most screen time since the Sontaran Experiment, at least as terms of the main threat, and it's probably the best they've been since the Time Warrior as well, the original story. And yet this story just does so much more to flesh out the Sontarans, both as characters and as species, not to mention given the personality of our lead Sontarans with fantastic performances. Um, there is one bit where General Starwiz says something, and then it cuts to another shot of him talking, and it does look like it might be another two separate Sontarans. It is a bit odd. Never mind. But yeah, just some brilliant stuff here, just absolutely amazing, and stuff around the Sontarans with Atmos, with Martha, Donna, and units, everything just works really well into the context of the story. Some minor niggles, some stories that plot points that could have been handled slightly more, slightly better. And it's also directed brilliantly by Douglas McKinnon, who would later go back, return to the show. I think maybe with Series 7? I'm not quite sure. Certainly within the Capaldi years, he's back. Maybe some Smith stories as well. But he definitely does this story, and he definitely does a few more during the Stephen Moffat executive producer era. I think definitely during Peter Capaldi's series, at least maybe some Matt Smith stories too. Anyway, I think Douglas McKinnon does a great job directing this story, and it just looks absolutely amazing. And just this is another brilliant story. This series has just been going really, really well, and with the best portrayal of the Sontarans of the show so far. Well, actually, no, scratch that. The best Sontaran portrayal of the entire show. Full stop. This is certainly a strong story. Some nitpicks I did have with it, and some niggles, but I personally really, really enjoyed it. Also, I just remembering that when the Doctor and Ross Jenkins, a great supporting unit character who sadly dies in episode 5, but in episode 4, he and the Doctor goes to Raskin's academy together, and then on the way back, they're almost assassinated by Sontarans, but they manage to escape, and then the Atmos system just has a little tiny they're expecting a big explosion, but it just has a little spark, tiny explosions, and the Doctor's like, oh, is that it? That was fantastic. That was fantastic. Subversion of expectations and comedy right there. That was brilliant. That was so good. Oh, there's so many great moments in this story. So overall, I will be giving the Sontaran Stratagem and The Poison Sky a 9 out of 10. Yeah, I do have a few nitpicks, a few things that didn't quite make it to 10. This one was actually almost an 8. So it was kind of on the ledge, but I think when talking about it, when talking more about the Sontarans themselves, how they were portrayed, this is the complete opposite of how the Sidemen were portrayed in Revenge of the Sidemen or the Daleks in Destiny of the Daleks. This is the complete opposite of that. This is not only are the Sontarans as good as they used to be, but they're even better. And I've already talked in length about that in this review. But I can't help it, the Sontarans are just so freaking good in this story, and everything else around it is also pretty good. Character development with our main characters almost on par with School Reunion, without having to be too dramatic, but still dramatic enough for us to still care about the characters. And the subplots also work pretty well. The weakest stuff probably comes with Luke Raskin, but the character is supposed to be annoying, and supposed to not be that likeable until his sacrifice at the end, so I don't have a huge amount of problem with that. And I do like how, to begin with, he's getting really into the Sontaran chanting bit with them at the end of part 4, and then uses that episode 4, and then uses that against them at the end of episode 5. Also, you can't beat the image of Frimrajman wearing David Tennant's coat in some of the last scenes in the last third of episode 5. Great stuff. That being said, the very end of episode 5, they contrived a way to have Martha Jones into the next episode. That's probably another one thing I will complain about this story, but although that's more of a problem to get her into the next episode, rather than keeping her on board after the events of this story. It's just that they could have Martha Jones in the next episode, have her for 3 episodes before her return in the season finale. But yeah, it's very contrived, and I don't think it quite works. This is probably the first time since, excluding the links to the Christmas specials, the first time since maybe some of the Hartnell-Troughton stories where they would directly link into the next story, and we'll see that a few more times later on down the line, such as Smile into Thin Ice. But it's a super contrived way. The TARDIS just closes its doors and takes the Doctor, Donna, and Martha to Messaline in the next story. Very, very contrived. And the reason they did that apparently is because Jenny in the next story, we'll talk more about that next time, but Jenny was the reason the TARDIS went there and it locked the doors and they couldn't go back. And some of the dialogue about the Doctor not being able to control the TARDIS, yeah, I think dialogue when the Doctor says, "It's not me," when something's going wrong and they're the ones presumed to be the ones in control. It's a bit stiff. The same could be said in Spyfall Part 1. Although to a lesser extent for me in that one, although more so for other people perhaps. Also, I would like to mention here that Martha is engaged to Thomas Milligan from the last the series 3-parter, where they teamed up together in the year that never was, and now she's gone and found the Tom in the year that was, and they've engaged. But despite mentioning it and showing it off the ring off a few more, the engagement ring a few times, ultimately this engagement comes to absolute nothing as she marries Mickey Smith after the Stolen Earth Journey's End. So this subplot was actually unnecessary in the context of what comes later. So yeah, that doesn't quite make sense in the future context. Here it's not so bad, but in the future it doesn't make sense because she then marries Mickey Smith instead of Thomas Milligan. How odd. It might have just been better to completely drop that storyline from this story. Just completely drop that. Don't worry about it. Yeah, there's some links between him and the Doctor, but still, I think it could have been something that could have been dropped, especially if Russell did want Martha and Mickey to be married following the Stolen Earth Journey's End. But I don't know. It just doesn't quite work in the context of what comes later. A bit like the Hybrid story arc, except not as bad. Nowhere near as bad, actually. But yeah, it still doesn't quite make a lot of sense. Okay, so let's end on a positive note. Okay, end on something positive. I like is it Colonel Mace? Yeah, I like Colonel Mace and Captain Price, the unit characters we have quite a bit of time with in the story, especially Colonel Mace, in terms of time. But yeah, I think those two could be good returning characters for units, along with Captain Magumbo later on in this series and in Plans of the Dead. But alas, we don't see them again. Also, what's his name from Planet of the Dead, played by Lee Evans, Malcolm. Not to be confused with Malcolm from Day of the Doctor. It'd be great to see those characters again, but alas, never mind. But I did like Colonel Mace and Captain Price here, and also the Valiant scene. Okay, I'm a bit more positive now because I've talked about that. Okay, let's end off this review on a positive note by saying the Valiant returns. Woo! Okay, that's it from me. Thank you for watching this review, and I'll join you next time for The Doctor's Daughter. Okay, let's see how that one goes. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Yeah. So the Doctor and Donna return to Earth to help Martha and Unit. And also I think the Mind Game trilogy, the Mind Game story. But I feel like in this story we get to learn more about Sontaran culture, shall we say, what the Sontarans are like, and we got more personality Sontar. But this is because that this story just introduces a whole new but this story just reinvents the Sontarans whilst keeping them. But this story just not only that being. But not to the extent of Lou. So it's not like the Daleks, but perhaps later down the line. But I do really enjoy this. But I do really like the blue. And like I said, in Power X, it's also, and that, yeah, that's pretty much about it. I lost my trail of thought there. But yeah, Luke Raskin's been, which is also mentioned here. There's quite a bit of Sontaran. Great series, by the way. That Tommy Zoom series. I recommend it to. P.S. Tommy Zoom was a very. I guess he's kind of a bit too confident. Anyway, but also still on the at least he doesn't completely hate soldiers without yeah, we'll get to that. She's really getting into this villainous portrayal of the character Altery, and just brilliant, really brilliant. Um, and yeah, it's also I also like to say that it's so some great writing and story, and but I think it's still really really great and a brilliant and it's also directed brilliantly by a few. Not quite sure, but he definitely comes back a little bit later on. Um, does he do one of the Christmas specials? I'm pretty sure he does one of the Christmas specials. He do the Doctors Within the Wardrobe? He might do that one. I'm not quite sure. That one, despite what you say about the script, it does at least look nice. But yeah. So on the whole, I will be giving the Sontaran experiment. Sontaran, wrong. Sorry. Some really great stuff. Also, you can't beat Freem Rajman wearing David Tennant's coat in a few of the last, and some of the dialogue around that point. Crikey, I thought some of this dialogue end on a positive note. I like Captain Price and Colonel Mace. They were good characters. I wouldn't mind seeing those characters. Not to be confused with Malcolm from Day of the Doctor, unless it. No, actually, yeah. At least Unit had a bit. It'd be great to see those characters again, but oh well, never mind. But I did like Colonel Mason and Captain Price here when they were on screen, when they had. Okay.